Assalamu alaikum, brother. Can you hear me good? Peace, bro. Send me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Making sure my microphone good. All right. Appreciate you. Peace and blessings to everybody. Give me just 1 second. Making sure this stuff's straight. Wa alaikum assalam, brother. Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings, man. On this beautiful Saturday night. 70 degrees today in January 18th. We're going to get started. I ain't going to be long, but I greet you all with greetings of peace and blessings. And we say it in the ancient Egyptian Arabic language of Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings be upon you from God. God's peace, not Donald Trump's peace. And we give all praise to Allah for allowing us to wake up every day and have life and have love and have the ability to be better and do better, because we know that not everybody makes it through each day. Not everybody wakes up. Not everybody has an opportunity to do better, be better. Not everybody has the opportunity to give and receive love. Many of our people are struggling beyond necessary, Shout out to everybody who's lost family members. Shout out to people that's grieving, suffering, trying to make it day by day, taking it one day at a time. Shout out to all our friends and family, our loved ones, our people, our community. I send a special shout out to my family, friends, brothers, sisters. Shout out to my queen, Malika, I love you. Shout out to my brothers in prison that's still fighting to come home. Many of them with life sentences, so according to the crooked state, they'll never come home. They'll die first, according to this crooked correction system that we find ourselves under. And all of y'all that know me know that I just come home 6 months ago, so I'm really still getting on my feet, but I've never forgotten one day that the people who not able to make it home today or who haven't yet made it home, they still suffer, they still struggle, they still fighting against the unjust, unrighteous, and evil laws of the state of Louisiana and everybody else across this country who's fighting for their freedom. Shout out to all our political prisoners, and we're not just talking about the Assata Shakurs and the Panthers, and shout out to brother Mumia Abu Jamal, freedom fighters, people fighting for their freedom. Not just the political prisoners that you hear about during Black History Month, but also the political prisoners who locked up up under crooked correction systems, and because they didn't snitch on somebody or they didn't rat on somebody, or they didn't sell out in any kind of way, or their views were too masculine for the prison system itself or for the crooked courtrooms itself. Anytime you have politicians making laws that take advantage of the less fortunate or the unknown or those who don't have the finances to hire these fancy attorneys, or they lock people up, in order to make political statements. For example, I was locked up for armed robbery back in 2001, and unbeknown to me, I was under what we know in Louisiana as the non-unanimous juries, the Jim Crow juries, where this crooked legislature, 20 years after Emancipation Proclamation took place, or to be exact, around 30 years. It's hot in here. They made a law or a scheme in order to reverse a lot of the progress that black people were making during the Reconstruction, especially down here in the South. Louisiana is one of the first to implement these slave laws, black codes, and this Jim Crow culture that the Caucasians at that time were benefiting from, because the people who worked the plantations were us, black people, for the majority, because we could take the sun, we could take the heat, we could stand and work all day. We knew how to do everything. We provided everything. So we were the prime commodity for them to put on the plantation for their benefit. So when you would see a plantation owner hire a slave master to run his plantation, and we know many of those plantation owners, especially down here in Louisiana, just Plaquemine Parish, New Orleans, and all these different, Baton Rouge, Marksville, Natchitoches, St. Martinville, all these different places. These owners who own stores and grocery stores and markets and department stores, when you saw them hire a slave master and have him to lord over black people on the plantation, they were making lots of money. And not just money, but they were building businesses, they were building networks, they were building governments. And when emancipation came about, letting slaves go, that put a dent in the pocket of anybody who owned the plantation and the people who ran the plantation. Because remember, that's not always the same. Just because you had a slave master own the plantation doesn't mean he owned it. It just means he managed it. So the owners always had an issue anytime somebody made a law or did something that was in favor of us. So in 1865, 1863, 1865, regardless of the year, that caused an earthquake in the economy, from tobacco, cotton, now you got soybeans, but sugar, and every other thing that we were working and slaving to produce for a plantation owner. His pockets got hit by the Emancipation Proclamation down here in Louisiana in particular. We know it's all across the South, but I'm only sticking strictly to Louisiana because that's where I'm at. That's where I was locked up 23 years, and that's where the non-unanimous jury Jim Crow laws were instituted and are still in play today. And what I mean by Jim Crow laws, those plantation owners didn't like it when slaves could walk away from the plantation, or slaves could go free, or slaves didn't have to work for them no more, or slaves could learn how to fight and gain their freedom, or slaves ran away, or slaves burnt the plantation down. Whatever it may be, they hated that because it hurt their pockets, it hurt their business empires, it hurt their legacies when they raising their children up to think like that and do that. So anyway, fast forward from 1865, during the Reconstruction, and our people were doing better, doing good, because we do everything, we know everything, we built everything. So it wasn't nothing for us to go build banks, businesses, airports, shopping malls, whatever it may be. Hateful Louisiana, they turn around. I see you, Queen. Assalamu alaikum. I love you. Hateful Louisiana wasn't the only one, but they were one of the baddest and boldest to do what they did. So in 1898, I forgot the exact date, but these slave masters, slave owners, plantation owners, managers, Ku Klux Klan, white supremacists, and just devils, devil-minded individuals, people with no soul, people with no concern, people with no heart. They gathered around and had a conference, a legislative conference. These are legislators. These are lawmakers, people that are supposed to be public servants. They held a convention, and part of the convention was a normal thing that they do. But during one of these particular conventions, which, by the way, most of the politicians back then were associated with the Klan. If they were not Klan members themselves, they were associated, and you saw that because they kept this stuff on record, and they had the audacity to keep it as trophies, souvenirs, and for archival purposes in their archives. They never thought that we would be smart enough, or they never thought that we would be big enough to figure stuff out, to read. They didn't think we was intelligent. They didn't think we was blessed by God like we are. But lo and behold, in one of these congressional hearings, they open up and they admit that they do this for the white race. They do this for the saving of the white race. They did this for the saving of white supremacy. They did this for the supremacy of the white man versus everybody else, including his own woman, white women. So, and this is not for people that's always talking about this is racist. No, that was racist. And the only way that you can really be racist is when you have the power to punish somebody else because you don't like how they look. I've never hated anybody for how they look. I just don't like the fact you do what you do. So that's not the same thing. But even if it was, oh well, we're talking about historical facts and congressional records that are kept in the Louisiana Congress or Louisiana State Archives and Libraries. So what they did when they opened up this meeting and they declared that, they prayed for their God to bless their meeting and the functions that they were going through. And in this meeting, they came up with ways to circumvent the federal laws which were put in place to not only emancipate the slaves, but also to give us the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments. 13th Amendment was slavery was abolished except for committing a crime. 14th Amendment was passed in, a couple of years before, a decade before, in order to give equal rights to citizens of the states. And the 15th Amendment was, it is not as much talked about, but it dealt with a lot of our rights in, when it comes to voting and when it comes to assembling, because under Jim Crow, they didn't allow you to assemble as black people without the permission of a slave master or a white man or owner or whoever. So anyway, in this congressional hearing, and it's funny because this stuff is on record, so I'm just reciting what they already know and tell you. They glorify this history. So we're taught to study that. Study the devil, study the white man, study the master, study your enemy, study what's going on, because that's what helps you to understand the moves you need to make today in order to make a better tomorrow. So anyway, during this hearing, and I'm trying to be quick with this, I wasn't trying to talk this long. During this congressional hearing in 1898, they come up with a way to circumvent the fact that they don't want slaves or the American government, the Union didn't want the Confederacy winning, so they broke their back by releasing slaves. So down here in the South, these good Confederate states, these good old boy states, Louisiana was one of the premier states because it sits at the mouth of the Mississippi River, which is where all the business had to take place. There wasn't no United Airlines and Delta Airlines and all these other airlines. It wasn't no whole bunch of train tracks going crisscrossing the country, doing a lot of business like you see today. Remember, this is the 1800s, the 19th century. So one of the main ways to get that cotton up north, in order to transform that cotton into Levi jeans and Lee jeans and Jabot jeans and all this stuff that we love to wear now, they had to use boats to get it up north, either up through the Mississippi, and who had control of the Mississippi? Right there in New Orleans. Also, when we look at the people that were here, not just the natives, but when we talk about French people, Acadian people, when we talk about the heritage and the cultures of people that were here, this was a melting pot for a lot of people to come capitalize off of the land, because the land was very fertile and produced a lot of crops. It produced a lot of products. Like I said, cotton, corn, rice, sugarcane. This stuff still fuels the American economy today. So they didn't want to hear nothing about releasing no slaves, because nobody can work them fields like us. Why? Because God built us to take care of his earth. Now, when we didn't know that, we took care of the earth for somebody else. But now we learning, we're going to take care of it for ourselves and our people. But anyway, during this convention, they came up with a way to circumvent those 14th Amendment laws and the 13th Amendment laws by creating crimes. For example, it was already a crime for you to walk on the sidewalk and not get out the way when a white person passed. It was a crime for you to be somewhere without an ID card showing who you are and who gave you the authorization to go somewhere. It was a crime for you to talk without being spoken to a white person. It was a crime for you to look a white person in the eyeballs. And, if all y'all been to prison, know they just had changed some of those laws in prison that dealt with reckless eyeballing. There used to be a charge. If you was caught looking at an officer in the eyeballs too long or too strong, that was considered a threat to security. Because that comes from Jim Crow. They don't want you looking them in the eye, because as Jesus taught us, the eyes is the windows to the soul. So not everybody liked that. But that was a crime. Those type of crimes, jaywalking, being out past dark, being in these sundown towns, not answering when they talk to you, and hey boy, I'm talking to you, put your hands behind your back. These was crimes and justifications for putting you back in handcuffs and eventually putting you into a penitentiary or a penal system or a plantation so you can get back to work. One of the ways they did this, they had many ways, and I'm not talking about the whole legal system because I'll be teaching forever, and I plan on doing a lot more teaching this year. But for right now, I'm going to talk specifically about what I'm affected by directly. The 10-2, the non-unanimous jury law that they created in that 1898 convention, and you find all this on the web. Go look up Promise of Justice Institute. Matter of fact, shout out to them because they just helped. They just helped with some litigation with some of them brothers that was them thousands of people that been being held in prison over their release dates. Louisiana was found to be holding people on average from 20 to 30 to 40 days past the dates of their release, meaning they finished their sentence and they still sitting in prison. So shout out to Promise of Justice for putting forth the fight, bringing that to a federal level, trying to bring some justice to people who've been held captives, kidnapped by the state past their due date. And they blamed it on, their old antiquated systems. Their record systems wasn't up to date. Everything wasn't streamlined, or they just was backed up with their records, or understaffed, or underfunded. Whatever the excuses, they got all of them. But shout out to Promise of Justice because they've been fighting that. And there's just another aspect of the war that we always in with a crooked government that never wants to take responsibility or accountability for their wrongs. So in this conference, 1898, when they came up with this non-unanimous jury law, they made it to where in Louisiana and a few other states, you don't have to have a 12-man jury to convict a person of a felony crime. That's what they said. They said it was good enough if you had 11 out of 12 or even 10 out of 12. Matter of fact, it was 9 out of 12, I think, when it started. But they bumped it up to 10. So in this state, for 200 years, you've been having people convicted for major crimes, felony crimes, serious crimes, and they bump the charges up when they want, so everything to them is felonies and serious anyway. What they did was, in my case, I was convicted by 10 people, not 12. All of my jurors didn't even believe I was guilty. And like the thousands of people who convicted under these crimes, not every juror believed they was guilty. But in Louisiana, that was allowed, even though it's not allowed up under the federal system, or wasn't. And they recently changed that law because it was so wrong, but they still got people locked up from it. And they have not made it retroactive because there's many people that will have to be released immediately if they do. So the same tricks is in play. But with that 10-2 law, 10 jurors was enough to find you guilty, even if 2 didn't think you was guilty. And those 2 usually would have been, back in those days, it usually would have been black people. So black people know you wasn't guilty of what was going on in most cases. So they just push their votes to the side, say them 2 don't even matter. We got 10 enough to do it, or 11 enough to do it. So that's a Jim Crow law. I'm still on parole because of a conviction under that law. And there's hundreds of other people still living on parole up under that law. And there's many more that have died already in prison or at home, still up under that law. And what that means is Louisiana still, and I say Louisiana because the money makers, the money changers, the big bankers, the big businesses that profit off of the prison system, that profit off of the captives in the prison system, that profit off of our brothers and sisters who break their back with blood, sweat, and tears and die building up this system, they're not willing to change that. That's why we still fighting it today. And people ask me, how can they do that? Well, just like they used to do everything else during slavery. How could they separate man and woman and send a man up north and send his woman down south? How could they take babies and feed them to alligators? How could they take and rape men and rape women and rape children and burn them on crosses and hang them up in trees? How could they do that? Well, see, you can do that when you don't have a soul. You can do that when you believe that you're better than me. You can do that when you think that God favors you more than black people or any other people, American Indians, natives, Asians. They messed over everybody, but not as much as black people. So anyway, my point is, with the non-unanimous jury law and all the other laws that they've had here, from the second-degree murders to the 10-6 lifers, you got to go research this stuff. I ain't got time to talk about all of it. I'm about to shut up anyway. But what we see right now with the promise of justice fighting to get people home when their time is up, when they should be released on Friday, they need to go home Friday, not a month from now. That's inexcusable. So not only is the promise of justice fighting for that, they're also fighting to help people like me that's up under the 10-2, that's stuck up under these conditions, parole conditions, and the people that's still in prison they up under the horrendous prison conditions. And if you've never been to prison, that's a whole nother story. I will continue teaching on this. Go get my book, Surviving Incarceration. I talk about a little bit of it, enough to help us understand and bring our loved ones home happy and healthy. So I want to say this before I end it, because we know that this governor that we have right now, he's not really in favor of prisons and prison reform. He's not in favor of making right the wrongs of the past, because if he was, he would just pardon people that's been waiting to get pardons for years. If he was, he would change some of the laws that can easily be changed with executive orders. If he was, he wouldn't be doing stuff like, matter of fact, he's about to fly a flag tomorrow. Not tomorrow, he's finna fly the mega flag. Make America Great Again. He's finna fly Mr. Trump's favorite quote. He's gonna fly that flag Monday, which we know is just the honoring of Dr. Martin Luther King. But for them, it's the Trump inauguration. So this is gonna be very interesting for anybody who believes that things are different, things are better, it's not the same no more, and all this stuff that people say when they trying to get favor from this crooked government, or trying to get in bed with politicians. These the same politicians that inherit what their fathers did when they made that 1898 law, and they ain't changed it yet. Now, well, let me say this. They did change the law 2019, 2020, somewhere around there, around the pandemic. But they did make it retroactive. So it only applies to the people getting locked up now and going forward. It don't apply to the 1,000 people that didn't already died. And shout out to Jason Williams, the New Orleans district attorney, who did a good job with taking the initiative to set free people that he knew was messed over. He's pretty much one of the only ones. The rest of them just fall in line because, like I said, these are politicians, and the people who pay them, the plantation owners who pay the slave master, is the same plantation owners who pay the politicians. And so these politicians, when they make a law that puts people in jail or holds people past their sentence or makes it legal to violate somebody's constitutional and federal constitutional rights, anytime a politician does that, that prisoner is called a political prisoner because you're a victim of political circumstances. So, and when I'm not even talking about whether you did the crime or not. You know, that's irrelevant to this conversation. Yeah, that is a problem too, but that's irrelevant to this conversation. This conversation is talking about shout out to the political prisoners who are locked up by a crooked political system with politicians and government officials who refuse to do what's right. They refuse to do what God say, first of all, and they refuse to do what's morally right. When you know people been wronged, victimized, and harmed, and you refuse to change it, that makes you just as guilty as the people who did it 200 years ago. There's no difference, because we still got people today locked up from a law that was created during Jim Crow. What that means is any politician who fails or refuses to do their sworn duties, that's actually called malfeasance. So we're going to be looking at a lot of that. You know, we're going to be looking at a lot of that this year. We're going to be looking at a lot more educating the masses, educating our people, our family members, educating our children, you know, arming them with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, because as God teaches us, the lack of knowledge causes the people to perish. And when we don't know, we can be taken fast. I was a victim of that. So this is why today I am so conscious. Today I am so, and I'm not talking about, I'm not in none of these groups that we woke and we conscious brothers, and I'm not into all that. I'm into knowing what needs to be known in order to have an effective fight for your freedom and your family, your faith, and to progress in a world or a situation that's set up for you to not progress. So shout out to all of our prisoners. Shout out to all of our families who are, and I don't just mean prisoners in the physical sense, like you in handcuffs or you stuck behind bars. We got a lot of people that's in prison mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and financially, that's not in bars. They're not in an institution. They're at their house and they work as slaves. They go to work, come home, go to work, come home, go to work, come home. And they continuously in a cycle, always owing somebody, paying somebody, and never really having a chance to enjoy freedom itself. So shout out to all the people who's struggling for freedom everywhere, because it's always good to see people escape, escape bondage. It's good to see when people left off the plantation, and then the people had the nerve to say that we had a mental illness because we wanted to be free. What that was, drapetomia, or whatever it was, they would even make us feel guilty for wanting to be free. So when you deal with a devilish mind like that, when you deal with a devilish system that's built off those devilish minds, you got to be armed with God, because God is greater than the devil. And God teaches us what we need to see, what we need to hear, how we need to feel, what we need to think, and how we need to move. And that's what he taught Moses when it came to the children of Israel. Because in this day and time, we are the children of Israel. We are the children that's on a plantation run by Pharaoh and owned by Pharaoh. And it's going to take God to come and bring down rain, earthquakes, hail, fire, storms, pestilence, diseases, whatever. All those signs of Pharaoh, the 9 signs of Pharaoh, the 9 signs happening in order for us to be free too. So shout out to everybody who's incarcerated. Shout out to all the people who are in prison. Shout out to the people who are strung out on addictions and trying to get straight. Shout out to our people just struggling day by day to make it, to do something with themselves, and then to help somebody else. Because back in 1865, when the people said, "We are free, boss, y'all free," when they did that, we had a love for each other that allowed us to band together. The plumbers, the welders, the carpenters, the seamstresses, the tailors, the mechanics, those who built buildings, those who built airports, runways, roads, those who wrote books, those who cooked food, those who raised babies. All those people stuck together and built town after town after town, city after city after city, neighborhood after neighborhood of successful people who used to be slaves. Now that they're free, they was using their time and their energy to build. If they could do it then, we can do it now. But we just got to get past a lot of these tricks that the devil throw at us when we talking about, everybody's right now talking about the death of TikTok. Ooh, so what? I'm talking about the death of people dying right now on fentanyl. The death of people right now that's dying that should have been home last week, but they still in prison, having to make sure that they don't get accidentally stuck with a knife or accidentally put in a cell block where they're not guaranteed to make it back out. You know, I'm not worried about no TikTok. I ain't worried about no Diddy. I'm not worried about none of this stuff that these people keep putting in our face, because the real issues, like this boy no, I ain't gonna say that. Another issue, well, I am gonna say that. You know, a real issue is, might have forgot the little brother name that just got gunned down, little 6-year-old getting gunned down by cops. That's absurd. And when we got men that care more about foolishness than actually trying to work and save our people and help our people, that's a crime. You know, so I pray that us together, we always able to benefit our people. We always able to come together and serve God and do what our people did 200 years ago. When they let them off the plantation, they went to work, they started building, and they had so much stuff. Them people hated that. Them KKK, them clans, them different Lions clubs and Elks clubs and all them different secret societies and fraternities and all them exclusive groups of people that you wasn't allowed to get in, they hated that. That's why they was burning them down, burning them up, and putting us back in prison, because they couldn't stand to see us successful. They couldn't stand to see a person who come from nothing or who's been treated the worst on the planet turn around and be the best and be favored by God. See, people don't like that. They hated that. They hated we was favored by God. And it's evidence in the fact that they do everything that God don't like and try to put that on us in order for God to hate us too. So shout out to everybody surviving, because we got a lot of work to do. It's a lot to be done. I could talk forever, so I'm about to end this. Shout out to our families. Keep striving, keep struggling. You know, we're going to run into pain. We're going to run into heartbreak. We're going to run into misfortune. We are going to run into the devil every single day. That's our purpose on earth. Is God is allowing us to be tested. God is allowing us to be qualified for the next life. He's qualifying us to be survivors of everything that's going to wipe the majority out. Some of us got to survive. And you got to be qualified to survive. You got to know what you're doing. You got to know how to move. You got to know how to think. So, matter of fact, in the Nation of Islam, you know, Muslims in general, Allah teach us in the Quran what you should eat. And don't eat from the devil. And don't eat like the devil. And don't think like the devil. Because the devil not going to always be here. But God's chosen will. So, we trying to get in that boat. We trying to get on that ark. So, Shout out to everybody who's struggling and striving. Don't allow these distractions to take you off your goals and your focus. Don't allow your enemies and your haters to occupy so much of your time and your mind and your space, because we got a lot of work to do. And just remember, a lot of people, always, a lot of people blame everybody else for their problems and never take responsibility or accountability for themselves. And I'm like this here. I do know that Caucasians and white people and, in general, especially down here in Louisiana, were the ultimate enemy. They were the cause of a lot of issues. They were factually the architects and the orchestrators behind these racist Jim Crow jury laws. It wasn't black people, it wasn't American Indians, it wasn't natives, it wasn't Asians. Asians was treated bad too, early 1900s. They put them in internment camps too. But we didn't do that. That was done by them. So I know that for a fact. However, that is not my total mindset, or that doesn't occupy my mind 24/7 and sitting up complaining and worrying about what they're doing or saying. Because this is the thing. Europeans in general, according to National Geographic about 10 years ago or something like that, I think it was around 2015, I read the article, and a lot of people talked about it since then, so we already know. Genetic annihilation is happening all over the planet, and white people back in, Europeans were doing studies around 2015, and they were acknowledging that they're dying off faster than they can reproduce. So, and I think it was 2040 or 2050, the year 2040, 2050, when they were predicting that there would be hardly any pure Europeans left on the planet. So if there's not hardly any pure Europeans left on the planet, or pure Caucasians, that means that most of the people will be mixed and colored, and there'll be there won't be no more white people in a sense. So what that means is, for me personally, eventually the white man not gonna be here. I will. My people will. So what we gonna do then? They're not gonna be here to clothe us, feed us, shelter us, give us automobiles, fly us on a plane. They're not going to be here to tell us what to do. They ain't going to be able to print no money. They're not going to be able to grow no food in the grocery store. They ain't going to have no Walmarts. So what do we do then? How we going to feed, clothe, and shelter ourselves then if they not here? Because they've been doing it for the longest, like daddy do children. Well, when daddy not around, what the child going to do? We are the children of Israel, so if Israel not around, what are we going to do? That's where my mind be at. This is why when I come out of prison, you don't see me in clubs, you don't see me hanging out around no bars, you don't see me sitting up on the block with no dudes drinking and smoking and chilling and chasing women. You've never seen that. Anybody that know me know I don't even get on like that. Why? Because it's bigger things that have to be dealt with. There's bigger things on my mind, and there's bigger things that's on the minds of people that take this stuff serious. Because when you do a significant amount of time in prison or the projects, you know it takes some work. You know that there's damage being done to people's minds and people's hearts. Well, our little boys don't even want to be boys and men, and our women don't even want to be women, and they confused. And then a lot of our people don't want to fight, struggle. Little boys don't want to work. They don't want to do nothing. They want to sit up and play video games all day and talk on the phone. And then don't be talking about ideas and talking about no help or building nothing. They're talking about people, just gossiping. We ain't always had that. So when you see our people is so distracted and so misguided, that means we got a lot of work to do. And so I send a shout out to everybody who is trying to do some work, because we know it's not easy, but we will make it as long as we continue, long as we stay straight, long as we stay strong, long as we stay focused, dedicated, stay prayed up, keep studying because it's the stuff we need to know. And the more we know, the better we can do. And the more that we learn, the faster we go up. And the faster we go up, the faster somebody comes down. So, with that, I greet you all as I came with peace and love, man. Assalamu alaikum. And I hope that I said something beneficial that could help somebody, because I always try to. And if I said anything wrong, that comes from me and my era, so I'm open to correction. Y'all know me. I'm in the public. I don't hide. I don't shoot in the dark and none of that. So holler at me. And I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. And we're going to continue these conversations. And I look forward to conversating with some of y'all too, because we got a lot of work to do, especially down here, man. This man about to fly that flag. This finna be funny. Because Make America Great Again, and I'm not finna get into that because it's finna be a whole nother story. But Make America Great Again is the phoniest slogan ever, because America itself, what we call America, is not America. This is North America that this country and nation, United States of America, sits on. But you also have Canada, you also have Mexico, then you have South America, Brazil, Argentina, and so forth, so on. And I just remember recently, the president of Mexico actually was taunting Donald Trump with when Donald Trump said we should rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. And, you know, the Mexican governor shot back too. So the point I'm making, America itself was always great until it got invaded by foreigners and people who wasn't American and people who colonized what was already here. So it's funny how, you know, you see Donald Trump and any of his people, all his supporters, always saying this stupid stuff like, you're not even from here. You know, if we really look at all the facts, they belong, or they're naturally from the caves. They're naturally from, you know, Europe and certain parts of Europe. So it's funny how they conquer somebody and then put their name on it and then call everybody else aliens and illegal immigrants. The only immigrants here in America, United States of America, and Louisiana in particular, the only immigrants that's really here is Europeans, because the people that were here are natives. The people that belonged here, that this was belonging to, their land, they're natives. And the aliens, the foreigners, the conquerors, are the immigrants. And it wasn't allowed by God, unless you call money and power their God. That's the only God that allowed them to colonize and travel across the world and snatch people and kidnap people from Asia and Africa and bring them all over here to work. Those are the illegal immigrants. So it's funny how they finna fly this flag, this hypocritical, and I want to see how this turn out. It's gonna be funny, but we'll get back in. We'll give them more of that later. Anyway, I got to go. I love y'all. Peace and blessings. Thank you for your time. I hope I did a decent job explaining that 10-2 and all that other stuff. If not, just hit me up. Check the inbox or something, and I'll clear it up. I told you, I promised you, we'll be doing a lot more teaching this year, because there's a lot of us that we use our time wisely, and we're going to continue doing what we're supposed to do. You We're not worried about the haters. We're not worried about the naysayers. We're not worried about those who love this prison system and want it to keep going forever. We're not worried about them because we know, just like the children of Israel and Pharaoh, we know that God already promised us we will be free, we will win, and we are his chosen. So anybody that opposes that, that's Pharaoh. And we know how Pharaoh ends up. So we not worried about that. We know it's coming. What we worrying about is get our people ready for when it hits, because that's going to be the deciding factor. Can you survive when it really go down? And you ain't got nobody feeding you, clothing you, and housing you, providing everything that you consider a necessity. You got to provide it for yourself, because they're not going to be able to do it. They can barely save themselves right now. So shout out to all our people that's striving and struggling, and shout out to our people that's trying to do some help. Keep doing good. Don't be distracted, and don't sell your soul. You don't gotta be no rat. You don't gotta be no punk. You don't gotta be no chump. Everybody ain't everybody ain't sellout. Everybody ain't kissing butt. Everybody ain't shucking and jiving, and everybody ain't trying to sit at the table with the slave master and trying to, we ain't all trying to do that. Some of us really want to be free from this crap, because I spent 23 years waiting for the opportunity to hug my mother and hug my father and hug my sisters and hug my family, and it's even sadder when I look at people who I used to think that people that deserve their freedom even more than I thought I deserved mine. I saw many brothers that had multiple children. I ain't got no children. I seen brothers that had multiple children and they dead now, and their children will never see their fathers. I seen brothers that had wives and big families and property and stuff that they manage. When they come to prison and they lose everything, and they still got to figure out how to make sure their wife straight and make sure their kids straight and make sure their family straight, even from prison. A lot of them dudes deserve to go home immediately, especially with them fake bogus charges that they put on people and hold you in there, and then they play the game with you gotta wait around in court, and you gotta wait on the judge, and you gotta wait for this hearing, and then they postpone the hearing and they push it back. You gotta wait another 2-3 months. By that time, people die. So shout out, man, to all the families of people that didn't make it home, and some that might not even make it home, because people dying every day. It's just a reality. So I take my freedom serious, and I thank God, and I try to do what I can to help. But we got a lot of work to do, because this enemy, the devil, these people that oppose us in our freedom, and they finna fly this mega flag, and even though it's gonna be funny on one hand, it's really sad on the other because of the hypocrisy involved. But also, what makes it even more sadder is you're gonna have a bunch of people that look like me, black, and a bunch of people that were probably in prison or in situations like me, and they're going to be right there with him, clapping. Yes, boss. Yes, sir. That's beautiful. So that's what's really sad. I expect Donald Trump to do what he do. He already told you who he is. Our governor here supports him. He told you who he is. So when they fly their flag, that's what they do. But I'm just so shocked and surprised at how many of our people, like the children of Israel, clapping for Pharaoh. But I thank you for your time. Peace and blessings. I'll get back with you. Assalamu alaikum. Have a great night. Like I said, if I said something good or beneficial, all praise due to Allah. If I said something harmful, I take the correction. And other than that, man, keep your heads up, stay strong, stay focused, build with your family, build with your people, Help yourself, heal yourself, don't kill yourself. And I'll holler back at you later. Peace and blessings to everybody. Assalamu alaikum.